I woke up to the sound of a machine telling me I was still alive. Not a voice, not a name. Just a flat, rhythmic beep slicing through the dark like a metronome counting down something I couldn't see. My chest felt crushed, like a truck had parked itself on my ribs and decided to stay. My mouth was dry. My arms were heavy. I tried to move my fingers. Nothing happened. 3 months, I would learn later. 3 months in a coma after a crash on I-75 that folded my car like paper. The room smelled like antiseptic and cold air. No flowers, no balloons, no cards taped to the wall with hopeful handwriting. Just white walls, dim lights, and a plastic tray table pushed against my bed. On it sat a single folded piece of paper. Not a get-well card, not a note from a nurse, just a sheet torn cleanly from a legal pad. I stared at it for a long time before my hand finally obeyed me. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was familiar, sharp, controlled. The kind that never rushed. "We are no longer responsible for your care. Do not contact us again." Signed beneath it, perfectly centered. Marianne Carter, Douglas Carter, my mother, and the man she married 6 days after my father was buried. That was the second something inside me cracked. If you've ever had family treat you like you stopped mattering the moment you became inconvenient, take a second to like this video and subscribe. You're not alone. And what happened next is the reason I no longer believe blood means loyalty. I read the note again, slower this time. No apology, no explanation, not even my name, just a clean surgical cut. A nurse stepped in quietly checking my IV. She avoided my eyes. That told me everything. This wasn't news. This was paperwork, already processed, already accepted. "They signed yesterday," she said softly. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. My throat burned, but I refused to cry. Crying felt like giving them something. I stared at the ceiling instead and listened to the machine keep time with my breathing. Minutes passed, maybe more. Then the door opened again. This time it wasn't a nurse. 2 men walked in wearing dark suits that didn't belong in a hospital room. Crisp, expensive, the kind of clothes that didn't wrinkle when you sat down. The older one spoke first, calm voice, legal calm. "Ms. Carter, my name is Harold Bennett. I represented your father for over 2 decades. The name hit harder than the pain meds. Father. He pulled a chair close but didn't sit, like he didn't want to assume comfort. The other man stayed near the door, tall, silent, eyes scanning everything, like he was measuring exits. "I'm Lucas Monroe," the second man said. "Strategic advisor." I swallowed. My ribs screamed. "My mother," I started. "She terminated guardianship and financial responsibility yesterday at 4:12 p.m. Bennett said, cutting me off. No softness, no pity. The hospital notified our office immediately. He placed a thick folder on the tray table right where the note had been. "That action triggered a provision your father put in place 14 years ago." I laughed, a dry, broken sound. "My father's been dead for 14 years. Bennett nodded. He was thorough. He opened the folder and slid one document toward me. I recognized my father's signature instantly, bold, slanted slightly right. The same signature I'd watched him practice on scrap paper when he thought no one was looking. A trust agreement, dated 2 weeks before his death. Lucas leaned in and tapped a single paragraph that had been boxed in red. "Read that line," he said. My eyes traced the words slow and disbelieving. "Should the legal guardian of Evelyn Hale Carter abandon financial responsibility during any period of incapacity, including coma or medically induced unconsciousness, full ownership and control of the Hale Systems Trust shall immediately and irrevocably vest in Evelyn Hale Carter. No probate, no delay, no appeal." I felt cold all over. Bennett slid another document beside it. Hospital letterhead, my mother's signature at the bottom. Termination of responsibility, effective immediately. "She activated it herself," Lucas said quietly. My mouth went dry. "For 14 years, Bennett continued, your mother and stepfather have operated under the assumption that control would never revert to you. Your father anticipated otherwise." "What does that mean?" I asked. Lucas finally smiled. "It wasn't kind. It means the second she walked away, everything she thought she owned stopped being hers." I stared at the papers until the words blurred. My stepfather is scheduled to speak at the Horizon Health Summit in Chicago, Bennett said. 48 hours from now, he plans to announce a restructuring that permanently removes you from any succession narrative. Lucas checked his watch. Once that announcement is public, undoing it becomes expensive. Bennett reached into his jacket and placed something small and black into my palm. A badge. Matte finish. Minimalist. No logo. Just a name and a title etched cleanly into the surface. Evelyn Hale Carter, Trustee Unrestricted. My hands shook. This badge was issued the day your father signed the trust, Bennett said. It was never deactivated. Lucas stepped closer. There's a jet waiting. Miami executive. Wheels up in 90 minutes. From the moment we land, every second counts. I closed my fingers around the badge. The girl who had spent her life being minimized, ignored, reassigned, and quietly erased was still inside me. I could feel her curled tight, waiting for the hit that always came next. But something else was there now, too. Something sharp. A memory surfaced without warning. I was 17, sitting at our kitchen table, my father's funeral suit still hanging on the back of the chair, my mother standing at the sink rinsing a coffee mug like nothing had happened. Douglas understands business, she'd said, not looking at me. You wouldn't. That was the first time she'd decided who I was. I looked up at Bennett and Lucas. Get me clothes, I said. My voice surprised me. Steady. I'm going to Chicago. Bennett didn't smile. Lucas did. As they turned to leave, my phone buzzed weakly on the bedside table. A single message notification. Unknown number. I opened it. You woke up. Good. They never deserved you. R. I didn't reply. The nurse came back to remove my IV. The adhesive pulled hard against my skin. I welcomed the pain. It reminded me I was real. Still here. As she worked, I unfolded the note one last time. My mother's handwriting stared back at me. Controlled, detached, final. She had always believed silence was power. I folded it carefully and slipped it into the pocket of the hospital gown. Not as a reminder, as evidence, because the last thing my mother ever said to me, the sentence she thought would erase me, had done the exact opposite. She didn't know it yet, but she had just handed me everything. The jet was quiet in the way expensive things always are. No rattling, no vibration, just a low, constant hum beneath the floor, like the world holding its breath. I lay strapped into a leather seat that cost more than my first car, wrapped in a borrowed coat that still smelled like a department store. My ribs protested every breath, but the pain was clean. Honest. It didn't lie to me. Across from me, Lucas Monroe scrolled through a tablet, fingers moving fast, precise. Harold Bennett sat with his hands folded, eyes closed like a man reciting facts he'd memorized long ago. No one made small talk. Finally, I broke the silence. Why didn't he tell me? Bennett opened his eyes. Because if he had, he said it wouldn't have worked. Lucas didn't look up. Your father assumed two things. First, that grief would make you compliant. Second, that they would underestimate you. My jaw tightened. They didn't underestimate me, I said. They erased me. Bennett nodded once. Exactly. He reached into his briefcase and removed another folder. Thinner than the first, older. The edges were worn soft, like it had been handled often, but never opened in public. This, he said, placing it on the small table between us, is the part your mother never knew existed. Inside were handwritten notes, margins filled with cramped, familiar scrawl. My father's. He'd always written like that when he was thinking too fast to slow down for anyone else. Lucas leaned forward and tapped a page. He didn't just build a trust, he said. He built a surveillance net. I frowned. On his own company, on the people who would try to steal it. Lucas replied. Bennett flipped to a tab marked with a red dot. Your father anticipated 3 scenarios, he said. 1, they'd push you out quietly. 2, they'd keep you close but powerless. 3, they'd erase you completely. My throat tightened. He expected all of that. He expected your mother, Bennett said flatly. Lucas swiped his tablet and turned the screen toward me. Email logs, Metadata, internal audits, time-stamped access reports stretching back over a decade. Every system your father built had a shadow ledger, Lucas said, invisible to anyone without trustee credentials. Every time credit was reassigned, every time your name was removed from a document, every time a bonus pool was adjusted. I stared at the screen. My initials appeared again and again, ghosted in gray, added, removed, replaced. They didn't just take your work, Lucas continued. They laundered it. A flash of heat crawled up my spine. I knew, I said quietly. I just couldn't prove it. Bennett slid another document toward me. Your father knew you wouldn't be able to, he said. Not while living under their roof, not while dependent. That's why the condition required abandonment. I looked up. He needed them to expose themselves. Yes, Bennett said, voluntarily. The jet dipped slightly as we adjusted altitude. My stomach lurched. I closed my eyes until the nausea passed. You said he started this 14 years ago, I said. That's when he got sick. Bennett nodded. He began documenting immediately. He didn't confront them. He didn't threaten. He watched. Lucas's voice was low now. Your father believed confrontation teaches people how to hide better. That sounded like him. I swallowed. So what happens now? Lucas didn't hesitate. Now he said we decide how loud you want this to be. He swiped again. A schedule filled the screen. Chicago, Horizon Health Summit, main ballroom, 800 attendees, live stream to investors across 3 continents. Your stepfather plans to unveil a generational transition, Lucas said. Your brother becomes the face. Your mother stands beside him, smiling. Bennett leaned in. If that announcement happens without interruption, the market accepts it as truth. Reversing it later would cost you years and credibility. And if we interrupt it? I asked. Lucas's eyes met mine. Then the truth detonates in real time. My pulse thudded in my ears. What about criminal exposure? I asked. Bennett exhaled slowly. Your father coordinated with federal counsel years ago. Some of the evidence triggers mandatory reporting the moment it's presented publicly. I looked down at my hands. They were steady now. How much do they know? I asked. Lucas's mouth curved slightly. They know you're weak. That landed harder than any insult. They think you're still the girl who stayed late and fixed what they broke, he continued. The one who didn't fight back. The one who accepted scraps. A memory surfaced uninvited. My mother standing in the kitchen lowering her voice like she was doing me a favor. Be grateful, she'd said. Other girls would kill for this opportunity. I clenched my jaw. And my brother? I asked. Lucas didn't soften it. He believes everything he has is deserved. Bennett added. He believes you owe him loyalty. The jet began its descent. City lights appeared beneath the clouds, sharp and distant. Evelyn Bennett said gently, Your father didn't build this so you could take revenge. I looked at him. He built it so you could take control. The wheels touched down with a muted thud. The cabin barely trembled. Lucas stood first, already checking his phone. We land in 20 minutes, he said. After that, we don't improvise. Everything is timed. Everything is documented. Bennett gathered the folders and handed one back to me. Read this, he said. Memorize it. I opened it to the first page, a handwritten note separate from the rest, dated the night before my father died. Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I was right, and it means you survived them. Do not explain yourself. Do not ask for permission. Stand where they can't ignore you. My throat burned. The jet taxied to a stop. The door opened. Warm air rushed in, carrying the smell of fuel and asphalt. Lucas paused at the exit and glanced back at me. One more thing, he said. Once we step off this plane, there is no version of this where they still call you family. I stood carefully, feeling the ache in my ribs, the weight in my chest. They stopped being my family, I said, the moment they thought I wouldn't wake up. Lucas nodded. Then we stepped into the night, and somewhere over the city my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You always were stronger than she could handle. R. The first thing they took from me wasn't money. It was my name. 4 days after my father died, the house filled with casseroles and low voices. People spoke to my mother in careful tones like she was glass. No one spoke to me at all. On the 5th day, Douglas moved his briefcase into my father's study. On the 6th, my mother told me we were streamlining things. That was her word for it. Streamlining. Like I was excess weight. I was 17, still wearing black, still waking up expecting to hear my father's footsteps in the hall. My mother sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands folded, eyes dry. "Douglas will handle the company," she said. "You'll stay focused on school, on healing." I nodded because nodding was easier than fighting, because grief makes you agreeable, because I didn't know that was the moment my life got reassigned. The first badge they gave me didn't open doors. It opened the freight elevator and the basement. My official title was Junior Systems Assistant. No salary. Experience-based compensation. Douglas called it smiling like he was doing me a favor. My mother nodded beside him, eyes sharp, daring me to object. The basement smelled like dust and hot metal, one long table, 6 mismatched monitors, a rack of servers that hummed all night like they were whispering to each other. That became my world. I learned to come in early and leave before anyone noticed. I learned which stairwells didn't have cameras. I learned how to make myself invisible in a building my father's name was still carved into. They learned how to use me. At 19, I rewrote the patient intake pipeline after a hospital in Ohio nearly lost records during a transfer. The patch stabilized 3 regional networks. Douglas stood on stage at a healthcare conference 2 weeks later and accepted an Innovation Award. He thanked the team. My name wasn't mentioned. My mother mailed the press release to relatives with a handwritten note at the bottom. So proud of Douglas. At 21, I rebuilt the medication reconciliation module after a fatal dosage error almost triggered a lawsuit. I worked for 72 hours straight, slept on the floor between server racks, ate vending machine crackers until my hands shook. The system passed audit. My stepbrother Brian flew to San Diego and posed for photos beside a glass trophy. He wore a new suit, said the words vision and leadership a lot. I got a $250 restaurant gift card from HR. My mother told me not to be ungrateful. Image matters, she said, pouring herself wine. You wouldn't understand. At 23, I stopped correcting people when they forgot I existed. It was easier that way. I became useful and quiet. The kind of person companies depend on but never acknowledge. I learned every back-end dependency, every undocumented workaround. I memorized passwords no one else bothered to change. When things broke, I fixed them. When things worked, Brian smiled for cameras. Douglas stopped speaking to me entirely. If we passed in the hallway, he looked through me like I was furniture. My mother perfected a different tactic. Gaslighting. You're imagining it. You're too sensitive. Brian works harder than you think. You should be thankful we kept you involved at all. She said it softly, reasonably, like concern. I started doubting myself. That was the most effective theft of all. The only person who never did that was Aunt Rosa. She called every Sunday at 9, never missed one. Her voice always bright, even when mine wasn't. "How's my genius?" she'd ask. "Tired," I'd say. "Good," she'd reply. "Tired means you're still alive." She never sent money. My mother would have intercepted it. She sent postcards instead, mountains, lakes, places where no one needed anything from me. On the back she wrote things like, "They can't steal what they don't understand." I taped them inside the server cabinet behind a panel only I knew how to open. By 25, I'd moved out, a studio apartment above a nail salon. Thin walls, constant noise, freedom. I paid rent with freelance work under a shortened name. It felt safer not to be found. When the company prepared for its public offering, everything got louder. More executives, more meetings I wasn't invited to, more talk about legacy. Brian toured cities in private jets. Douglas shook hands with politicians. My mother curated outfits and smiles like they were weapons. I sat in the basement rewriting risk algorithms so underwriters wouldn't panic. The night the IPO bell rang, there was a party on the rooftop. Champagne, music, laughter floating down through the glass. I watched from the hallway with the cleaning crew eating leftover sandwiches wrapped in foil. My mother spotted me through the doors. She raised her glass in a mock toast. Then she turned away. That was the night I almost left. I had the resignation email drafted. Subject line clean, polite, professional. I hovered over send. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. It was my father's voice in my head, clear as if he were standing beside me. Protect what I built. So I stayed. Not out of loyalty, out of patience. I stopped pushing for credit, stopped asking for meetings, stopped trying to be seen. I let them believe I was harmless, replaceable, loyal by default. Behind the scenes, I documented everything. Not aggressively, methodically. Every time my name disappeared from a file. Every time a commit was reassigned. Every calendar invite that excluded me. Every email my mother sent at 2 a.m. adjusting attributions. I didn't confront. I collected. The system never forgot. Neither did I. By the time Brian started calling himself a founder in interviews, I had 14 years of proof stacked neatly in places no one else knew to look. They thought they'd buried me. What they actually did was teach me how to survive underground. So when Lucas told me on that jet that they believed I was weak, I understood. Weak people shout. Weak people beg. Weak people try to be liked. I had learned to wait. The city lights slid past the car window as we drove toward the hotel. Lucas checked his watch. Bennett reviewed documents. No one spoke. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. 14 years. 14 years of being edited out of my own life. 14 years of being told I was lucky to be included at all. And tomorrow morning, my mother would stand beside Douglas in silk and diamonds and smile for cameras, believing she had won. She had no idea that the girl she'd pushed into the basement had learned every wire in the building. And she had no idea that the quiet she mistook for obedience was actually preparation. Because the thing about ghosts is this: when they finally decide to walk into the light, everyone notices. The ballroom smelled like money, polished wood, expensive cologne, freshly printed programs stacked with surgical precision on chrome tables, 400 chairs arranged in perfect rows, all facing a stage bathed in warm, forgiving light. Forgiving for liars. I stood just beyond the heavy curtain, close enough to feel the heat from the spotlights, far enough that no one had noticed me yet. My badge rested cold against my palm, matte black, unassuming, deadly. Behind the curtain, Douglas Carter laughed. That laugh. The same one he used at charity dinners. At board retreats, at funerals he didn't feel. I could hear my mother's voice too. Soft, controlled, performing warmth the way she always did. She knew where every camera would be. She'd rehearsed this. Lucas stood stage left, half in shadow, laptop open, eyes calm. Harold Bennett was seated in the front row, posture neutral, expression unreadable. Owen Pike leaned against the sound booth near the back, hoodie zipped up, aluminum case at his feet. Everyone was in position. The MC's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Horizon Health Summit. Please join me in welcoming the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Carter Med Systems, Douglas Carter. Applause surged like a wave. Douglas stepped into the light, smiling, wide arms open. My mother followed 2 steps behind him, ivory suit, flawless diamonds catching the light like punctuation marks. She hadn't seen me yet. Douglas launched into his opening remarks. Vision, growth, continuity. Words designed to sound reassuring while hiding knives. I watched the crowd instead of him. Nods, smiles. Phones lifted discreetly for photos. These people didn't know the truth. They knew confidence, and Douglas wore it well. Then it happened. Brian saw me. He was standing near the aisle laughing with 2 investors when his eyes flicked past the curtain. His smile froze mid-performance. Confusion first, then disbelief, then panic. He excused himself and walked straight toward me, fast blocking my path before I could step forward. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, loud enough to draw a few glances. "You're not credentialed." I didn't answer. He smirked, falling back on muscle memory. "Seriously, Evelyn, you look ridiculous. This isn't your place. Go home." That was the line he always used. I reached into my jacket slowly. Let him watch. When I pulled out the badge and held it up just long enough for him to read the name and title, the smirk collapsed. Unrestricted trustee. Valid indefinitely. His face drained of color. I stepped around him. The private entrance to the stage had a scanner built into the velvet rope. Most people never noticed it. I did. I tapped the badge. Green light. The rope lifted. Security stepped aside without a word. Behind me, Brian said my name once. It came out wrong. Thin. Small. I didn't turn around. The applause was still echoing when I walked onto the stage. Douglas was mid-sentence, smiling, gesturing confidently. Then the spotlight shifted. He saw me. The smile died instantly. My mother's champagne flute froze halfway to her lips. 400 heads turned in perfect unison. I took the wireless microphone from the stunned MC with a nod. "Good morning," I said. My voice carried. Clear, even. "My name is Evelyn Hale Carter." A ripple moved through the room. 14 years ago, my father founded this company. Douglas found his voice. "This is a private event," he snapped. "Security." I held up one finger. "Today," I continued, "I am its majority owner." Silence slammed down like a door. I clicked the remote in my other hand. The screen behind me lit up. Slide 1. A handwritten note blown up 30 feet tall. "We are no longer responsible for your care." Signed, Marianne Carter. Douglas Carter. A collective inhale swept the room. "This note," I said calmly, "was left on my hospital tray while I was in a coma." My mother's face tightened. Slide 2. A trust document. Highlighted clause circled in red. 2 weeks before his death, my father anticipated abandonment. I paused. Let the words sit. This clause transferred control the moment my legal guardian walked away. Slide 3. Hospital letterhead. Termination of guardianship. My mother's signature. Slide 4. 14 years of system logs. Commits. Timestamps. Attribution removals. My initials glowed green. Brian's appeared in gray, cosmetic, post hoc. Slide 5. Emails. From my mother. To legal. To HR. Replace Evelyn with Brian on all filings. Remove basement personnel from bonus pool. Family continuity is critical for investor confidence. Gasps broke out. Phones came up openly now. I turned toward the front row. "Mr. Langston," I said, "you've held 12% of outstanding shares since 2011. He stood immediately. "I move for an emergency vote of no confidence in the current executive leadership and board," he said, voice steady. A woman in a navy suit rose beside him. "Seconded." Douglas lunged toward me. 2 security officers intercepted him before he took 3 steps. I raised the tablet Harold had handed me earlier. Under the original bylaws, I said the majority owner may call and execute binding votes at the annual summit without delay. I looked directly at my mother. All in favor of removing Douglas Carter. Marianne Carter and Brian Carter from every executive role and board seat, effective immediately. Scan your badges now. Green lights bloomed across the room like wildfire. Numbers ticked upward on the screen. 72%, 75, 78.1. I lowered the tablet. "The vote is binding," I said. "This meeting is adjourned." The room erupted into chaos. Shouting, questions, chairs scraping. Then the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. 6 federal agents walked in, jackets unzipped, letters unmistakable. The lead agent held up a warrant. "Marianne Carter," she said, voice cutting through the noise. "You are under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy," my mother screamed. "Not words, just sound." She jerked away as cuffs snapped closed around her wrists. Diamonds flashed uselessly. "This is a mistake," she shrieked. "I am Marianne Carter." Cameras clicked like gunfire. Brian dropped to his knees near the stage. "Evie, please," he sobbed. "Tell them it's a misunderstanding. Mom didn't know. We're family." He reached for me. I stepped over his hand. Douglas stood frozen, staring straight ahead like a man already gone. Agents took him next. My mother twisted one last time as they pulled her toward the doors. "You think you've won," she spat. "You're still nothing. You'll always be that girl in the basement." I leaned in close enough that only she could hear me. "No," I said quietly. "I'm the one who built it." The doors slammed shut behind her. The ballroom fell silent except for distant sirens. I handed the microphone back to the MC and stepped off the stage. Lucas closed his laptop with a soft click. Owen exhaled for the first time all morning. Harold Bennett met my eyes and gave a single nod. 400 people stared at me like they were seeing the building's foundation for the first time. And for the first time in 14 years, no one looked past me, no one interrupted, no one told me to be grateful, because the truth had finally taken the stage, and it wasn't asking for permission. 3 months later, the city didn't know my name. And that was exactly how I wanted it. I stood on the balcony of a high-rise apartment overlooking the river glass railing cold under my palms, the skyline stretched out like a system diagram finally running clean. Traffic moved in steady lines below, lights blinked, servers hummed somewhere far beneath the noise quietly doing their jobs. No reporters, no relatives, no one asking how I felt. The court approved my name change on a Tuesday morning. No ceremony, no speech. I signed the paperwork with a pen that felt heavier than it should have. Evelyn Hale. The judge glanced at the file, then at me. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. The indictments had already explained enough. Carter Med Systems stopped being Carter Med within the month. New letterhead, new filings, new board. I didn't make a spectacle of it. I didn't issue statements about betrayal or strength or resilience. I let the filings speak. I let the numbers settle the argument. The stock dipped for 3 days. Then it climbed. Investors liked clarity. They liked clean ledgers. They liked leadership that didn't steal from its own foundation. The first thing I did was fire everyone who had known and stayed silent. Not publicly, quietly. One meeting at a time. Some begged, some argued. Most avoided my eyes. Severance packages were generous, enough that no one could call me cruel, enough that guilt wouldn't linger. I didn't need revenge from them. I needed absence. Douglas took a plea deal. His attorneys spun it as cooperation. The judge called it what it was, mitigation. He signed over properties accounts, shell companies I hadn't even known existed. When the sentence was read, he didn't look at me. I don't think he could. My mother fought harder. She screamed in court, accused everyone, me, the board, the system, my father's ghost. She cried on cue and smiled when she thought it helped. It didn't. The restitution order stripped her down to a rented apartment in a neighborhood she used to pretend not to see. No assistants, no dinners, no curated version of herself. The last message she ever sent me arrived at 2:14 a.m. You didn't have to destroy me. I deleted it without replying. Brian lost his medical license 6 weeks later. Moral turpitude, the board called it. He sent emails from addresses that changed every month. Long ones, apologetic ones, angry ones, nostalgic ones that pretended we'd ever been close. I never opened a single one. The silence felt earned. I moved the headquarters north. New city, new building, no portraits in the lobby, no founders carved into walls, just glass light and open floors. On my first day there, I walked the offices alone before anyone arrived, listened to the building wake up, the faint hum of servers behind reinforced doors. It sounded familiar. I kept one thing from the old company, a single postcard, mountains at sunrise, faded edges, my aunt's handwriting on the back. They can't steal what they don't understand. It sat in the top drawer of my desk. The rest went into secure storage, cataloged and sealed, like evidence from a closed case. Aunt Rosa was the only one who flew out. She showed up with one small suitcase and no questions. We cooked pasta badly, drank cheap wine on the balcony, laughed until we cried about my father's terrible jokes and worse music taste. On her last morning, she left her spare keys on the counter. Use them when the city gets too loud, she said. She still calls every Sunday at 9. Some things don't need changing. Lucas took an office with no windows exactly as requested. He likes systems better when they're unseen. Harold retired 2 weeks after the restructuring finalized. Bought a sailboat. Sends photos of sunsets and bad coffee. Still answers when I text. Owen runs infrastructure now. Proper title, proper salary. Glass walls instead of basements. No one calls him invisible anymore. The company donates its software to rural hospitals that can't afford it. No press release, no branding. That was my father's dream. Not profit. Access. Some nights I stay late, not because I have to, because I want to. I walk through the office after midnight lights dimmed, listening to the building breathe. I stop by the server room and rest my hand against the glass. The hum is steady, alive, just like it always was. The difference is this. The doors are open now. No one hides down here. No one gets erased. When I leave, I turn off the lights and lock the office behind me. Not out of fear, out of habit. The city greets me with noise and motion and strangers who don't know my history. That's the best part, because my life no longer requires witnesses. Family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who don't disappear when you stop being useful. I didn't lose a family. I shed a weight. And for the first time in 14 years, I go home to a life that doesn't need their permission to exist.